From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's Just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
Oh, hi there.
This week with special guest Michelle Kramer Joe, mother of Cody Turner, who disappeared from Yakima, Washington in 2015. If you've got a tip for Melissa, tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837, or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host, leaving gingerbread cookies out for Santa, hoping he'll leave a small bite mark in one of them for DNA testing, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. It's like Santa knows I'm getting my own personal DNA testing kit for Christmas.
Oh, is that right?
That's very interesting. Do you know anything about that, Mark?
I think our host may have just dropped a hint. Maybe.
I hope Santa's listening, and he will let me take a swab of his DNA from any of the gingerbread cookies and test to make sure. We'll find out who this fucker really is.
Yes, I don't trust the whole jolly old elf thing. He's much bigger than an elf.
Absolutely.
I never did quite trust that.
He's like a jolly old Amazonian.
But he is on his way, which reminds me, darling.
Yes, sir.
Can I call you darling this one time?
Just the once.
Congratulations on our 60th episode and the conclusion of Season 1. This is our final episode for Season 1.
60th episode.
Can you believe that?
I kind of can't. I really kind of can't.
It was a year ago that Melissa came to me and said, we're doing a podcast. I go, oh, that sounds good.
No, what happened was I begged to differ.
Yes.
What I said was, I would like to do a true crime podcast. And you said, all right, we'll make that happen. I was like, oh, no. No. I was just talking out my ass again. No.
You know your wish is my command.
It really is. It's why I don't say much anymore about what I want because it ends up in my bedroom.
I had a whole lot of this old equipment back from when I was recording stuff at here. I'm a singer-songwriter, and I had a lot of
fantastic producer.
But a lot of old analog equipment, and I thought, I don't have any of this new equipment all these young whippersnappers doing podcasts have, but I bet I could still piece something together. And
God
sure
damn
enough.
it if we didn't.
And I want to say, Melissa, you are an amazing host. This is an amazing podcast. I'm incredibly proud of you, and I just can't wait to start Season 2.
You had to know I was going to cry.
Well, it's true, and it's been so much fun. I just really enjoyed doing it and listening to you all of these episodes, and we're going to have a lot of fun in the coming year. But we got to take a couple weeks off. We need to we need to take a little bit of a break.
Yeah, even Santa, takes off like Valentine's Day or something. So yeah, we're taking a couple weeks off. We will be back with a new episode on January 8th. So Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, I guess Christmas Day and New Year's Day, we won't have any new episodes, but I can't believe we're finishing out 2018 with 60 episodes. If you had told me 10 months ago, you're going to end the year with 60 episodes of something you love doing more than you can ever explain, I would have said you were crazy, that there's no way that we would keep doing this and I would grow to love it more every day.
Yeah, it's really it's been really great, and our listeners our listeners are devoted to you, and I think that's really
both of them.
It's growing, and it's really exciting.
The people that have found us are our people, and they are so good to us and tell us things that we need to hear and things that it's important to know, and give us the kind of support that I didn't really know was possible. When you occasionally feel like you're yelling into a canyon and that all you're hearing back is your own voice echoed back at you, and then you get an email or a Facebook message or or something that reminds you that you aren't alone and that your love of doing this is falling on some ears, and the ears that it falls on are priceless to us. There would be no us without you. And so I'm really grateful. Grateful doesn't even encompass the feeling. I'm overwhelmed with gratitude for the people that listen, that have found us in 2018, and hopefully will stay with us in 2019. And we're more blessed than we have words to describe.
Yep, just keep spreading the word, folks. We just keep telling your friends and your family and everybody you run into about us, and before you know it, we'll be even bigger. So
that would be nice too. I'm not saying I would turn that down. I'm just saying that the people that we do have that listen are more priceless to us than we can describe. And here we are at the end of 2018 with 60 episodes in the can.
I know, it's just so strange that I think our first, we put up 3 right away when we started. I think on the same day. I think
Yep.
January 2nd, I think is what it was. Might have been January 1st. I can't remember, but it was right at the beginning of the year, and all of a sudden it just turned into this. It was just done. It was like we knew we were going to do it, and we just continued to do it every year, every week, and it's
A couple times a week sometimes.
Yeah.
That's why we have 60 episodes.
Yeah.
It's the smaller episodes, the murder-tizers, I felt, just were updates or things that didn't have enough oomph to be a full episode. And those are fun too. We really love doing those. When you do one podcast a week and that feels like a lot, sometimes you're like, oh, something's happened that we need to talk about. So the murder-tizers are just as much fun as the full-length episodes.
right. And those little tidbits sometimes come from you, the tipsters. So
Absolutely.
please let us know if you hear something. Call us. And call us on the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER, or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com and let us know, because we really do put that stuff on the podcast.
Yeah, we're not, called just the Tipsters because I'm a 12-year-old boy. I mean, I am, but that isn't the only reason we're called just the Tipsters. We are always hoping for tips that can help find a missing person, which December is, the month where most people find a way to come home. And home doesn't have to mean the place you grew up or even the people that you were born to. You can come home to wherever your home feels good to you, wherever it feels like home to you, and to be with the people that are your home. It can be chosen family. It doesn't have to be biological family. So people that are missing, we wanted December to be about bringing them home or sharing their stories and hopefully helping to bring them home.
Which brings us to this week's episode, and our final episode of the season.
It's a wonderful way to end this year, this season, this podcast season, with an interview with Michelle Kramer Joe, whose son Cody went missing July 25th of 2015. And he would be 27 now. He is a son, a father, a sibling, a friend, and a good guy. And hopefully our interview with Michelle will shake some trees loose, and maybe we'll be able to help push that along and get some information. So Cody had struggled, as many of us do, with depression and had bouts on and off with substance abuse. Doesn't mean he isn't deserving of being found. He was a sweet and is a sweet soul, and a father of a beautiful daughter, and a son to a mother who is working harder than most of us ever have to work in our lives, and definitely on something that none of us want to have to work on, which is finding someone we love who is missing. And he had been gone with his dog during the day. He was living with his grandmother, his paternal grandmother, and his father. Came home, took a shower, picked up cigarettes, and left around 9 p.m. and said, I'll be home tomorrow morning. And that was it. That's the last that anyone had seen him. His grandmother heard him say, "I'll be home tomorrow morning and I love you." And that's the last that anyone heard from him. His phone continued to be active for 2 days after he went missing, and then it is not. Lots of odd things, as what happens with most missing people, lots of odd occurrences, strange facts that come out, weird rumors that float around as to what could have happened. In a town like Yakima, it just doesn't seem like the missing people that are missing should be missing. Law enforcement puts forth, it's people don't go missing here. If they do, they are found. If they do go missing, it's because they want to. The people that are missing involuntarily are found. Well, that's not true. There are several missing people, may or may not be related to Cody's case. But what we do want is to get more information out about Cody. And here is our conversation with his mother, Michelle. So we're really grateful today to have Michelle Kramer Joe with us discussing the case of her son who's missing, Cody Turner. Thanks for being here, Michelle.
Thank you for having me.
So I know I've done some research, and there is some things online. There are some television interviews. There are lots of theories and speculation. But tell me about your boy, Cody. Tell me about Cody.
Cody, unfortunately, had gotten to methamphetamines about a year and a half before he went missing. I blame myself partly because I had a daughter that passed away on the 21st of this month. It'll be 14 years ago. She died when she was 12. And I took off and left my boys with my parents while I got lost in the drugs myself. So I feel maybe if I'd set a better example, things might have been better for him. I don't know.
We all have our own journey, and I don't want you to be kicking yourself now, because it's really clear to anyone who reads anything about Cody that you are a fantastic mom and that you and he had a really special bond that is rare, I think. I'm an only child and I don't have any kids, but I know the bond I had with my mom. And one of the things that was so fascinating about what I read about you and Cody and your story is that before my mom passed away, we had, I think, the same kind of connection that you and Cody did. It was unspoken and it went both ways. And she obviously, I think, was a little more aware of it than I was. And her connection to me was very, very strong. But my connection to her, I'll never forget. I was probably in my late teens and I had a weird feeling that she should not go to the library on a certain day. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I couldn't figure it out in my head, but I called her and I said, "Look, I don't know if you were going to go to the library today, but don't go. I don't know what's going to happen." And she said, "Oh, the hair on my arms just stood up and I had books in the car. I was going to return to the library and I'm not going to go now." And as far as we knew, nothing happened. There was nothing out of the ordinary, and maybe things changed because she wasn't there. Maybe, the time and space continuum, was bent, but she didn't go because she listened to me, and that meant a lot to me. And I know you really felt almost immediately within a short period of time, something was going on. Something, yeah. Yeah, tell me about that, how that happened to you.
Oh, well, it was really weird. The last time I talked to Cody on the telephone was on the 25th of July, so a day before his dad and his grandma saw him the last time. And on the 27th, I just had this sudden, I don't know, I'd been having a good day, and then it was just this feeling of dread and sadness. And I swear I heard him say, "I'm sorry, Mom, and I love you." And then it's like I watched various stages of his life go before my eyes, from the day he was born, birthdays, his high school graduation, with his daughter. And it's like I felt his life leaving him.
Wow.
And it really bothered me a lot. And I'm glad I said something to my fiance and to my youngest son, because it really bothered me. But, I forgot to mention, too, the last conversation Cody and I had on the telephone, I got mad at him and hung up. So part of it, because I was still upset with him, I didn't call to check on him till the 28th, after his dad came over to see if we had seen or heard from him.
Right. And he was an adult, so
Yeah.
you had every right. You could be upset with him as an adult or as a child, and you
Yeah.
could hang up the phone. And of course, those are the times that we regret the most, when something happens to a loved one, when we've had maybe crosswords and hung up. But I think it says a lot that you heard probably very clearly in your ear his words and what he meant and felt, even if if there was something happening at that time that he was leaving this earth, his body. I think it's kind of a gift that the thing he wanted most known was that he loved you, that you were the one he connected with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We always had a more difficult relationship, Cody and I, but we were also the closest of any, my 4 kids.
Absolutely. I mean, a difficult relationship doesn't mean, it's not close. In fact, I think the close ones are difficult because you take the time and the effort to work through the difficulties. So I know Cody knew you were there for him during the good times and the bad. So how did it end up that he was staying with his grandmother and father, his paternal grandmother and father at the time?
I honestly don't remember how he ended up staying there, because he'd been with my parents for 10 years after my daughter died, and then he just, I don't know, couldn't afford rent, whatever, and they had an extra room, so.
And he seemed comfortable there, and Mrs. Lennox, his paternal grandmother, seemed, like they had a relationship where he said, "Look, I'll be leaving. I'm leaving, and I'll see you tomorrow."
Yeah.
It seemed like they had a very open relationship too, even though it was, there was a big generation gap.
Yeah.
Grandmother and grandson. So was he a night owl?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. It just seemed.
When he started using the meth, yeah, he was.
It seemed like that he was out a lot at night. He would say, I'm leaving and I'll see you in the morning. And yeah. It's so interesting. Obviously bad things happen during the daylight, but it's so interesting how many bad things happen after dark.
Yeah.
There's that old saying, like, nothing good happens after midnight, except maybe going to sleep, maybe. So in the interviews I've seen online, the Yakima County Sheriff's Department and the Yakima Police Department seem very open to any sort of situation that could have happened to Cody. What do you think happened to Cody?
Well, we had another man go missing that was actually a friend of mine. He went missing on the 10th of July of that same year.
Is that Mr. Stotts?
Yeah. Yes. And while I'm not 100% sure that there's a connection between the two, I mean, there is a possibility. And there's a possibility that it's also connected to another woman that was shot the same day that Chad went missing.
Right.
And to a murder that was committed later in November of that year.
Right. So in a town as big as, Yakima, it's like 240,000 people. That's about the size of the town that we live in, a smallish town. There's a chance that Cody could have known Chad.
They did know each other.
They did know each other because of the geographics where he lived near you, not far from you.
And at one time, Chad had been my neighbor.
Right. So Chad lived near you. Cody would have run into him there for sure. But there's no real proof that they were connected. Do you feel like that something happened between the two of them, or do you feel like something happened that the two of them ended up in the same position?
Well, Raven Cutler, the one that was, she was sentenced to 30 years in prison for the murder of Norma Emerson. She told me that she had seen Cody and Chad together.
Okay.
But on the 23rd of July, but at that point, Chad was supposed to have been missing for 13 days.
Right.
Already. And then we had another girl say that she'd seen a video with Cody and Chad together, and that Cody was forced to watch Chad be murdered. And then he called his daughter's mom in the early morning hours of July 24th. I think she said it was like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And he said that he had people after him, and he was wanting her to pick him up, which she didn't. She just figured he was high. So with what Raven said, and this one girl saying she'd seen a video and knowing that he called his daughter's mom at that time, and it made it possible, But I just don't know.
Do you really think that Cody could have been in the same situation, and maybe something happened to him just because of the company, just because of Chad. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that could happen.
I mean, we've heard that my Cody was taken on a mistaken identity thing for another Cody.
Oh.
We've heard so many different stories.
Of
It's
course you
unreal.
have. Yeah, no, I know there's so many things online that are, it's almost difficult to wade through.
Yeah.
So how do you feel that the police department and the sheriff's department have done? Do you think they've done a good job of trying to keep an open mind?
They're a joke. They're a joke.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's definitely, you're not, the first family member of someone who's missing who says that. It's almost a rare thing when a family member, is happy with the way law enforcement handles a case. I get that. And they don't have the same investment. So there's a lot of things missing, and maybe you can help me fill in some blanks. So his phone pinged for 2 days after he sort of lost contact with you and the rest of the family. Has his phone ever been found?
No.
And they won't release the information of where the phone last pinged?
There was somebody from Missing in America that had got a ping on it somewhere. I forget what Nancy Schaefer was her name, but I mean, the police, I don't believe that they've done anything, partly because he's an adult. I can understand that, and I can understand that's why they really don't do a lot, because he is an adult.
Right.
But they could at least return phone calls, which they don't.
Yeah, I understand, I guess the focus is on missing children, and you've probably heard this phrase before, which is sort of bothersome because I'm a white woman, but it's missing white woman syndrome, where missing white women get all of the attention. And if you don't fall into that category, then and a lot of missing men just don't put the attention on them. And I mean, men can be 18 years old, and I don't know many 18-year-old men. They're still boys. I don't know many 25-year-old men. They're still boys.
Right.
I barely know any 30-year-old men. They're still boys. So a 24.
You're getting closer to me now, so slow down.
You're a boy, a couple decades past that, but yeah, you're still a boy too. So they haven't released any of the cell phone records for Cody's phone, which is difficult. It sounded like when Cody left his grandmother's home, he was on foot. Did he not have, he didn't have a vehicle?
No, he had, this is another thing. He sold his vehicle like 6 months before that. And then in November of that year, and it wasn't until I got the police report that I found this out, that it was impounded from behind our Big Lots here in town.
So he sold it to someone and they left it behind a store.
Well, it was sold 2 more times, or possibly 3 more times after Cody sold it. But it was never transferred out of Cody's name.
Ah. Okay. So when he left, he was on foot. Is there, what's Yakima like as far as public transportation?
There's buses, but they quit running like at 6 o'clock at night, about that time.
Right. I was, we live in Southern California in a similar sized town, and our public transportation is abysmal. If you don't have a car in Southern California, you're not getting anywhere unless you walk. So I wonder if Cody had a plan. If there was public transportation, would there have been any record? A lot of times now there's like a bus pass or a rail pass that would show if he got on or off any sort of public transport, but there was no record of that either.
No.
So he just left on foot, and
he left with somebody that I had considered a good friend, an older guy. His name's Tracy Joe, and his story's changed like 6 different times of
now
what happened that night.
This is the first time I've heard of Tracy's anything about him. So he was a friend of the family, and Cody left with Tracy, and Tracy's story has changed.
Yeah, well, Tracy was a friend of mine. I don't think he knew that Cody was my son until after the fact. Because those 10 years when I left the boys with my parents, Cody come out with my fiance and I the least, Mm-hmm. So if you knew he was my son or his dad's son or my fiance's stepson, that was one thing. But he didn't volunteer that information.
That's interesting. I've never even heard of Tracy's name in all the research I've done. That's very fascinating. Do you still have any sort of access to Tracy, or they've just questioned him enough times to know that he's not going to give the same story every time?
The police have never questioned him. I took him in information, this weird girl saying that Cody was probably tied up somewhere 'cause I don't know if I want this shared with everybody, but my son apparently had a fetish for being tied up, and it wasn't always for a sexual thing either.
Well, that's interesting. I would think, a grown adult can do what they want, but being tied up is typically not something you hear about happening to a male.
Yeah.
And being kept. So when someone goes missing, the theories are insane. People come out of the woodwork that you don't even care to know, to tell you what's happened.
Yeah.
So,
well, I was able to get into one of his Facebook accounts
Oh.
and found things that suggested that there. And then I found a couple things that he'd handwritten too about that, He'd want somebody to put him in a duffel bag, zip it up, and leaving him in a dumpster just for fun or whatever.
well, everyone has their own idea of fun. That doesn't sound like fun to me or you, but
No.
He also seems like the kind of guy that could get out of that if he got put into that. Like he could get out. And I know that, the description of, he would be 27, I guess.
Yes.
So his physical description changes, like 5'5" to 5'7" and 150 to 170. And I know that sometimes the substance abuse can make your weight go down
he's lost a lot of weight.
Right. So at the beginning of the year in 2015, he'd written a public Facebook post that basically apologizing to his family and friends for, that's not the kind of thing someone does if they don't really, you have to really mean that. It sounded so heartfelt, and I knew he was going into treatment, and then 6 months or so later, he's missing. Yeah. So do you feel like there was something that happened that stressed him out to maybe go back to a life that, he had known but didn't really want to do again?
Well, that's the sad thing. He never really got out of it. It's like, like you said in that post, he gave it to God and asked God to help him fix himself or end his life. And he hated it. He that was the one drug he swore he'd never do. He'd smoke marijuana before or drink on occasion, whatever. But, and that's like he knew how drugs can and had affected our family.
Right.
And so I don't think anybody was more disappointed in Cody than he was in himself.
Yeah, I think you could kind of see that and feel that. And all of the pictures online, it didn't matter the length of his hair or if he had facial hair or not, or even his weight. You could always see the light in those beautiful green eyes. He has such a beautiful inner light. That was one of the things I found so fascinating, is that he just looked like literally the sweetest boy you could ever meet. He was
the type of person who would help anybody.
That's what he looked like. That's exactly what he looked like.
Animals, people, whatever. And the kid was headstrong.
Right.
I always called him my more child because he was the more demanding. He would do, when he was little, I found him in a viral seizure. I think he was about 2. And that one could be explained, a sudden spike in his temperature, and he had a seizure. But then after that, he kept having them. Well, Cody would also hold his breath during a temper tantrum. And it wasn't until after we'd done CAT scans and MRIs and nothing came back that the doctor and I figured it out. It's only when he was doing his breath holding.
Wow.
So he went into a seizure.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a very strong-willed person.
Yeah.
And sometimes the strong-willed people are harder on themselves than anyone else. Inside they have a standard they want to live up to, and if they feel like they aren't, that can. Do you think he battled depression?
Oh, yeah. Since his sister's death, yeah.
Yeah.
Their whole world got turned upside down, She died, and I didn't know how to handle it. I couldn't be there for myself, let alone them.
Right. Which is understandable.
Yeah.
So he had just gotten back custody or shared custody of his daughter, Natalie.
Visitation with her, yeah. He had to fight hard for that.
Right. And made that happen. And then he's gone. So how is Natalie now?
She still asks questions from time to time. I don't bring Cody up unless she brings it up because I get tired of having to give her the same answer over and over. I don't know. We haven't talked to him.
Of course.
And she's asked, there's so many weird things here, like his car being impounded. the lady that it was impounded from, that had possession of it at that time, was actually Natalie's daycare provider at the YMCA after school program.
Oh, that's kind of a little too close for comfort, huh?
Yeah, and Natalie had told her that her and her dad played games together all the time now, and he was really good at playing hide and seek.
Oh, wow. So you think that Natalie and Cody have a connection like you and Cody have?
Maybe. I do believe so.
That's very fascinating. So if the car was impounded, was there any evidence in the car that would have led to any, finding Cody?
They say that there wasn't, but they still haven't got back to me on that either, because they told me since it was still in Cody's name that I could put in a petition to the court to have it released to me. But they're still not ready to let it go yet for some reason.
So then they have a reason to hold on to it, they think.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's one of the things that's so confusing and troubling. I had had a guest on last week who is a prosecutor who has written a book on how law enforcement can help investigate and prosecute no body cases if they think there's been foul play and the person has not been found. And one of the questions I asked was, how long can they hold on to something, typically a vehicle, which is one of the bigger purchases in our lives, right? I mean, a home and a car. And
Right.
if you keep someone's vehicle, like how long can you keep that if you feel it's evidence? And he said, there's no limit of time. They can keep it forever. So
Yeah.
I guess the police can keep Cody's car, or Cody's, car that had been owned by other people after he went missing.
Right.
They can keep it as long as they think they need to. So they must think there's a reason to hold on to that, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
Yeah, and it sounds like the police are not as forthcoming as I thought they were. I really did think, I thought that what I felt was that they were, unlike a lot of cases that we think about doing on the podcast, law enforcement won't budge. They won't give you, there's the Freedom of Information Act. They won't give you any file, any information. And the things I found online about Cody's case, I felt that the police were talking at least, but it sounds like they were talking in generalities and maybe not in particulars about his case, and that they aren't as forthcoming.
No, they're not.
To me, it seems very odd that his phone would ping for 2 days after, which would mean it either had to have been fully charged, because very few phones are going to last for 2 days without a charge, or he took a charger with him, and then they had to know where it could be found. I think that's kind of odd. The car and the phone, pretty odd to me that they can't release the information to you, but maybe they feel like it would compromise a case if they had to bring a prosecution against someone.
Yeah.
So do you think there's a chance that he, succumbed to the elements even though it was July and it wasn't freezing cold? Or do you feel like he could have potentially taken his own life? Do you feel like either of those options could be true or no?
I think if he'd taken his own life, he would have been found by now.
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to say he didn't, because there is always that possibility.
Right. I'm going to agree with you. I know that, law enforcement feels there's just a few options: foul play, succumb to the elements, or take their own life. And I knew the time of year wouldn't really lend itself to him succumbing to the elements. It didn't seem like he was on a path to end his own life.
No.
It just also didn't seem like he was on a path to be around people that, may take his life, but you never know who people come in contact with.
Yeah.
And even in this day and age when he, is so young and has a digital footprint, has a cell phone, and has social media, it just seems so odd that he has disappeared without a trace.
Yeah.
So I know the distinguishing marks, his size, his weight, his eye color, hair color, what he was probably wearing, his tattoos, which are great markers. Why do you think he took out all of his piercings? Do you think that was like to try and have a different life?
Well, he got a lot of his piercings when him and his ex-wife were together, and most of that stuff I don't think was Cody as much as it was her. I don't know.
So he was doing it for the girl, and then now he's like, I'm done with that. Right.
Right,
I
because
get you.
it's like that tattoo that he had with the skulls and the swords that extended up onto his neck was to cover up his ex-wife's lips on his neck that were bright red. It was a bright red tattoo.
Okay, I was wondering why the skulls had such color. Typically, they're
Yeah.
typically not that colorful. His tattoos are very colorful, and they are really interesting. And I love that he has his daughter's name in flame.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else that you want the listeners to know about Cody?
I don't know. Most people look at him, like he was a drug addict, and that's one thing that the news has only said too. They've never once given a physical description of these guys that are missing. They, like with Cody, they said that he was had a problem with drugs and that he suffered from depression. And with Chad, that he was homeless and a registered sex offender, level 3 sex offender, I think it was.
Level
Not once
1,
did
yeah.
they ever give a description of him.
Well, I actually have pictures of both of them near my desk, Chad and Cody. And, Cody is a really beautiful, I'm just going to call him a boy, even though he was a man. He's a beautiful boy.
Yeah.
And a dad and a son. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if someone did drugs. That isn't important. And,
Right.
and depression, I don't know anyone who hasn't suffered from depression. What matters is that we can find him and bring him home.
Right.
So the most beautiful thing I've read, I think, from any person who has a missing family member was from you on your Facebook, on the Facebook page of Missing Cody Turner, is from you. And you said, we don't know if we should continue to hope or if we should be grieving. Our lives are now lived with unresolved grief, ambiguous loss, and it's not a fun way to live at all.
No, it's not.
And Michelle, that's literally the most beautiful thing I've ever read from someone who has a missing family member or loved one, because it's everything wrapped up into 3 sentences. You've wrapped it all up into 3 beautiful sentences. And I hope that you will continue to hope, and we will continue to hope, and we will put all of Cody's information in the show notes for this podcast, and we hope we can bring Cody home.
Yeah. It's like from the beginning, I've said that I didn't need to know who, didn't need to know why. I just want to know where he's at.
That's what we all
if
want.
somebody could just do that anonymous, and there are days, that I just feel like I'm not ever going to get nowhere with this.
Well, we will have, I know there's the anonymous 800 number, the Crime Stoppers number. I know there's the the anonymous email address from Crime Stoppers where they can't trace an IP. We will put those in the show notes too. And we have our own tipster hotline that is anonymous also. So we will put all of that information in the show notes. And thank you for being here today, Michelle.
Well, thank you.
We want to say thank you to Michelle Joe for taking time to talk to us and tell us Cody's story. When Cody went missing on July 26th of 2015, he was 24 years old. He would be 27 now. He was between 5'5" and 5'7", and between 150 and 170 pounds. He had blonde hair and beautiful green eyes. He kept his hair pretty closely cropped. He would sometimes have a goatee. He had numerous tattoos, very distinctive tattoos. His daughter's name, which is unusually spelled Natalie, Natie, with flames. He had skulls on his bicep that went up to his neck, and he had on his inner bicep sort of a tribal barbed wire on his right bicep. He had numerous piercings, ears, etc. He had taken most of the jewelry out. He had a scar on his left wrist and a scar on his abdomen, and he had previously fractured his left foot, and he was a smoker, a cigarette smoker. If you have any information on what happened to Cody Turner, the Yakima Police Department and Yakima County Sheriff's Department have an anonymous tip line. It's 1-800-248-9980. They have an anonymous email address that you can fill out a form and anonymously send any information on Cody into them. That's Crime Stoppers, altogether one word, CRIMESTOPPERSYAKCO.org. And I want to say thank you to producer Mark for all of his hard work in this podcast. This journey could not have happened if it weren't for him. And I am so honored and blessed with this guy. Thank you, Mark. And more cowbell.
And remember that number, 832-TIPSTER, 832-847-7837, the Gmail, jttipsters@gmail.com. Happy New Year, happy holidays. We'll see you in 2019.